Swarm is a limited series created by Donald Glover and Janine Neighbors, released in 2023. It's a psychological thriller with some true crime elements. It follows Dre, a superfan of Beyoncé-inspired Nyjah. It's an examination of stan culture, relationships, and connection. Glover has already shown interest in the horror genre with some of the one-off episodes of Atlanta, but Swarm has significantly more tension, blood, and body count. The series is elevated by strong performances from the lead cast, especially Dominique Fishback. She's the only connecting line between episodes, which play out more like short vignettes than a singular story. Despite this, or maybe because of it, she offers a nuanced look at someone who has truly gone down that rabbit hole, and it's oh so deep. Other noteworthy actors include Billie Eilish as a cult leader, and Chloe Bailey as Dre's best friend. The writers for the show include the two creators, Stephen Glover, Jamal Allori, and Malia Ann Obama. Many of the same creative team for Atlanta also worked on the show, and according to Glover, the two are set in the same universe, although we'll get into the complications of that later. The writing is definitely the strongest in the pilot and the fourth episode, and the others are more mixed. The character work is generally fairly strong, but the plot elements can feel contrived. At first glance, the most prominent theme is the examination of stan culture, that is, the parasocial relationships that fans have with celebrities. That's certainly a major part of the show, and the basic premise is that this obsession has turned Dre into a killer, but the whole conceit is a smokescreen. Like Atlanta, it's an examination of black culture, but while the show is primarily focused on male relationships, Swarm is almost entirely dominated by women. Each episode of Swarm focuses on fairly disparate themes, offering a unique angle on who Dre is as a character, but never delving too deep into any one subject. This is a strength and a weakness, as the breadth of discussion is interesting, but it also feels surface level at times. This was an intentional choice by Glover, who said that, think of it more like an animal than a person, and compared her to a dog, stating that he's afraid of dogs because he can't look them in the eyes. His comments did draw controversy, as did the show as a whole, especially in its treatment of black women. There are compelling articles from Nyla Burton and Stitch that point to something they call misogynoir, a hatred of black women by Glover. He has himself acknowledged this in a 2020 interview with himself, where he asked, "Are you afraid of black women?" It's an allegation that has followed him since early on in his career, with concerns about his lyrics and his work as Childish Gambino. Of course, the show has a number of black women in the cast and crew, but Glover was the creator. He pitched the idea, directed the pilot, and his DNA is all over the show. The reason cited is that many of the secondary characters are caricatures, his direction implying Dre is subhuman, and a lack of understanding about fandom, and specifically how it relates to violence. In effect, black women are not allowed to be violent or aggressive, as it results in them being demonized, and the fantasy of the show doesn't align with that dichotomy. Despite these issues, however, the show has a lot to offer. To go further is to walk into spoilers territory, so I'd advise watching the show first. It's only 7 episodes. Before the episodes even begin, however, there's a disclaimer that has been the subject of much discussion. This is not a work of fiction. Any similarity to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is intentional. This is a play on the typical line at the end of all films, "This is a work of fiction. Any similarity to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental." The show is centered around Nyjah, an ex-beef for Beyoncé. Many of the events depicted in the show happen to Beyoncé in one way or another. She released a hit album based around her partner's infidelity, has over 25 Grammys, wears similar clothing, and has comparable visuals in their music videos, and both had twins. There's also an incident in the 3rd episode where Dre bites Nyjah, which is something that actually happened to Beyoncé, although it was confirmed that it would be an actor rather than a fan in the real incident. So at a basic level, the disclaimer seems to be referencing these similarities. It's not, however, as the whole script is flipped in episode 6, when it's revealed that all events depicted in Swarm, up to that point, were fictional, dramatized versions of actual events that occurred in this real world, as a series created by the in-universe Donald Glover. In that world, there was a serial killer going around committing the acts shown, or at least something similar enough to inspire a series. Given all of the horror films based on true stories, however, there's no telling how much is fact and how much is fiction. The whole structure of the show changes with this revelation, and the disclaimer goes from a Fargo-esque farce to a commentary on true crime shows. Media based around actual crimes is far from a new phenomenon. The Zodiac Killer came out only 2 years after the murders it was based on were committed. But, with the advent of true crime podcasts, there's been a severe increase in their popularity. Last year, there were multiple shows based on Jeffrey Dahmer, and many of these thread the line between depicting the acts and glorifying the person who committed them. Swarm, although the reasons behind it may be questionable, goes to pains not to do that. Back to the pilot episode, it starts off fairly innocuous. Dre is introduced, and her adoration for Naja is clear from the first frame. She excitedly buys tickets for $1,800, although it's later shown that she has been skipping rent and food to afford them. Part of the episode's greater focus on poverty. She, along with her roommate Marissa, both work at the mall, although Dre almost loses that job when she shows up late after a night smoking weed. It's a fairly simple setup, and establishes quickly the problems that Dre faces. She's emotionally stunted, with childlike drawings and torn magazine pages dotting her walls. She's also clearly in love with Marissa, but unable to tell her about it. There's a deeper darkness as well, though that's not explored until the end of the episode. After arguing with Marissa, she goes out of town herself, going home with one of the Culkins. Due to this, she misses desperate pleas from Marissa, and by the time she returns home, Marissa has seemingly overdosed and dies. This sends Dre into a deep depression, and eventually her furniture is repossessed, leaving her with an empty room and an empty house. Throughout all this, there is building tension, the sound of a swarm of bees, as that's what Naja's fans collectively call themselves, the Swarm. After she is kicked out of Marissa's funeral for making a scene, that's the final straw. She heads to Khalid, Marissa's old boyfriend's house, and there's an incredibly tense and well-done scene where they talk. He even weeps in front of her, feeling deep hurt. Despite this, Dre blames him entirely for her friend, and also her world's, death, and beats him over the head with a lamp. This is where all the tension has been leading to, and is the moment that propels the rest of the show. After she finishes him off, she immediately dives into the fridge and eats pumpkin pie. This happens after a number of kills, and is something never fully expanded on. It seems to be the personification of id, the base instincts of the animal that Dre has become. Eat, kill, have sex, all these low-level desires and feelings, and for her, they're all tied together. In the next episode, over a year has passed. The timeline of the series is fairly unique, leaping ahead months at a time. The entire show takes place from April of 2016 to about June of 2019, and significant events happen between episodes, which can result in needing to process a lot of information at the start of each new scenario. In episode 2, Dre is now working at a strip club, insisting on dancing to Naja songs only. She befriends another stripper named Haley, played by Paris Jackson. There's an amusing interaction between her and Dre when she says her last boyfriend couldn't accept her being black. This is a joke straight from Atlanta, but it's also true. Paris is the son of Michael Jackson, so is half black. Haley has an abusive boyfriend, and after a number of fights, Dre sneaks away and kills him. Haley stumbles upon her trying to dump the body, but is immediately receptive of the situation, offering to flee like Thelma and Louise. Instead, Dre kills her. This is far from the first time that Dre has offered help, love, or even assistance, and turns it down. It's a running theme that she has opportunity to get off the path that she's on, but inevitably she keeps doing the same thing, over and over. In the final act of the episode, her car breaks down while she's driving a group of girls from the strip club around. A man that has posted some negative things online about Naja stops them, and offers to help. They go back to his house, and Dre tries to kill him, just like she'd done to several others, but he overpowers her. The other girls who were with her discover the situation and immediately side with Dre, killing the man who they thought was raping her. Dre offers a false accusation, and then a fandom piled on and drove the other person away. Dre then fled, leaving the fandom to deal with the consequences. It's a bit of a mixed message, but highlights the power that people as a group have, but also how dangerous it can be. The next episode again has a number of people who are friendly towards Dre. She's stalking a woman who criticized Naja, who heads into a fancy health club. She's stopped at the door, but a young guy mistakes her for someone else and invites her in. He also accuses the front desk of racism while being unable to tell Dre apart from his friend. She then breaks into the house as someone from the gym, and he immediately helps her, offering food and shelter. She's just using him, however, like she uses everyone else she meets, as he has access to backstage passes, which are a direct path to Naja. While she has always eaten junk food, he is a health nut, after previously having an unhealthy relationship with food. She seduces him, however, and the two have a snack-fueled night. He even moves like an animal, on all fours, during the encounter. Again, food and sex are tied together, linked to the base desires and reinforcing her animal nature. She begins to not even bother with basic social interactions, as once she gets into the party, she responds to conversation by throwing food. She then sees Naja in person, and imagines herself devouring her, like a peach. In turn, she takes a bite out of Nyjah and is forced to flee. After all of her work, she was close to something she truly wanted, a chance to be close to Nyjah. Then, she devoured it, destroying any chance for salvation. In every opportunity Dre has to do something right, or to help herself, she does the opposite. A familiar situation leads off the next episode, which is again 4 months after the last. Dre is driving erratically and gets pulled over by a cop. She's let go, but he follows her to a gas station. While there, a white person offers to help her, getting the police officer to leave. The woman then offers a place for her to stay, and she's led to a female empowerment center, or a cult. Eva, played by Billie Eilish, leads a small group of women in the compound. She gains leverage over them by a series of hypnotic meditation sessions, looking to discover secrets. In Dre's case, there's significant ones, and the group cleans off this bloody car that she drove there, implying they know about her murders, but don't care as long as she's one of them. Throughout the series, people think they know Dre, picking up on superficial similarities and extrapolating from that. Eva thinks she has a connection to Dre because their names both end in A, as Dre is going by Kayla. But this is a lie, and although she learns more about her throughout the sessions, she still doesn't understand her. She just knows where the bodies are buried. This is why in the end she believes she can control Dre, and she won't care about missing a Nyjah concert. But she's wrong, and loses her life for it. Similarly, Haley believes she has formed an immediate and deep connection, and when they work together to bury a body, she thinks it's a permanent bond. Then Dre kills her. Reggie in the previous episode was the same, letting Dre into all aspects of his life, and he's punished for it. Dre takes on the role of a changeling, a fey creature. A new name, a new appearance, and she globs onto someone else's life before destroying it and moving on. Just like Glover said in an interview, she's not really human. The episode is focused on these kind of false relationships and dynamics, with the cult as an extreme example. In one early scene, Eva wears a t-shirt with Lisa from Summer of 4 Feet 2. In The Simpsons, she abandons all things nerdy and gets a whole new wardrobe, trying as hard as she can to act cool and not care. It works, and she becomes quick friends with a group of kids, as Bart tries desperately to impress them, but fails. In the end, he reveals her true self to them, but they don't care, and are still her friends. The group believes that Dre is Lisa in this situation, having to give up her old things, her phone, and obsession with Nyjah, but ultimately coming around to their new and cool lifestyle. Again though, they make these assumptions without taking the time to understand Dre, and when she doesn't respond in the way they expect her to, they don't know what to do. In the end, they try to keep her away from the music festival she was planning to go to, using their knowledge of her killings to keep her restrained. That doesn't work, because Dre has shown time and time again she doesn't care or think about consequences, and when Eva tries to stop her, Dre runs her over. Twice to be sure. Ultimately, she misses the concert, and everything she had done was for nothing. The next episode focuses on Dre's backstory more. She's been constantly texting with Marissa's phone and hers, keeping her first love spirit alive. The phone is now shut off, and she breaks into Marissa's parents' home to try to get them to turn it back on. First she meets up with one of her old workmates. It's now been a bit over 2 years since she left. She tearfully tells a story about meeting Nyjah and talking for hours. It's all a lie, but it's also possible that even Dre believes it. She spends the second act of the episode exploring Marissa's childhood home. In most episodes she is given time to enjoy things, in amongst the chaos and violence. Here she even plays with the family dog. After Marissa's parents return home, she confronts her mom with a gun, but is dismissed with an eye roll. They blame her entirely for Marissa's death, and when given the opportunity, her dad points a shotgun at Dre, prepared to use it. Dre manages to escape, but gets winged and runs into the night, bleeding. The theme of the episode is on grief, and the different effects it has on people. Dre is still in denial, trying to get Marissa's phone back on so she can continue to talk to her. Her mother is depressed, accepting Dre pointing a gun at her with casual disdain. Her father is full of anger and wrath, and directs it at the world, but especially Dre. He's clearly been waiting for the day for a long time. In the end though, nothing is resolved, no emotions let out or healed, just 3 very injured people who have to keep on living. Episode 6 is different. It takes on the style of a mockumentary called Falling Through the Cracks. It follows Loretta Green, a police detective who is investigating Dre's crimes. For Swarm, this is the real world. The rest is fiction within the universe, and the events that Loretta is investigating are what actually happened. The episode censors all mentions of the pop star, but it's implied to be Beyoncé, meaning that Nyjah was made up in-universe as a stand-in for her. Loretta also develops a connection with Dre, as they have the same last name. Just like Eva, it's a superficial similarity that develops a false bond. She delves into Dre's past, finding out that she was adopted into Marissa's family for a brief time before she reacted violently in a sleepover and was sent back into the system. There are themes of nature versus nurture here, especially when Loretta interviews the adoption worker who handled the case. The caseworker gets upset with the implication that there was something wrong with Dre, or that there was a direct cause for the violence. Ultimately, though some elements are revealed, there's not a single explanation for why Dre embarked on such a violent path, and there's not intended to be. It's deliberately ambiguous so the viewer can project whatever idea suits them best. At the end of the episode, it's revealed that Dre, or Tony, is now in custody after having run on stage at a concert. Chronologically, that's the last event in the series, as the next episode shows the events leading up to it from Dre's perspective. In an after-credits sequence, Donald Glover is shown in an interview with the Atlanta logo in the background, talking about a series he's developing based on the true crime that was just covered. This means that both Swarm and Atlanta are fictional stories in the world shown in episode 6. The finale begins only 1 month after episode 5. It seems Dre is healed from her wounds and goes by Tony now. Dre begins a relationship with a grad student named Rashida, and at first it seems like things are going well. Rashida even says that she doesn't like Nyjah, and while there is tension, eventually Dre seems to accept it, and maybe they've grown up. Like everything in Dre's life, however, that comes to an end, and it's revealed they bought 2 tickets to Nyjah, just like they did years ago with Marissa, again spending rent money on it. When confronted, Dre regresses, unable to look her in the face, staring down at the ground. Just as Rashida is done with the conversation, Dre turns around and chokes her, eventually to death. Dre cries, just like they cried when running over Eva, but it's always the same story, just a favorite song on repeat. Dre sneaks into the Nyjah concert, after accidentally burning the tickets they'd given to Rashida, killing a scalper, which is really the only justified killing in the show. In Dre's view, they go on stage, and instead of being escorted out, they're asked to sing directly by Nyjah. Nyjah, now with Marissa's face, comforts Dre, offering a shoulder to cry on. The final image of the series is Dre finally getting what they wanted, but it's all a lie. While Dre may believe it's what happened, it's similar to American Psycho. Some of it may have been real, but it's still told from the perspective of a deranged person. Both have similar themes in terms of the falseness of modern life and the surface-level relationships that can define it. Swarm is well shot, well acted, and touches on interesting themes. While it doesn't go as deep as it could on many of them, it still creates a conversation, which is always positive. There's some structural problems, especially in its portrayal of black women, but ultimately it's a fascinating, thrilling, and inventive watch. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like, comment, subscribe, and be well.